Welcome to the 2022 Lande Family Lecture. I'm Norma Erickson, the museum's education manager. Usually you see Sarah Halter, the museum's director, in this spot, but she's running the tech today from the cheap seats up there. The Lande Family Lecture was established in honor of the Lande family's generous donation to the Capital Campaign for Preservation of the building. We thank the family members, R. Gregory, Brenda, and Galen Lande. Today's program is an author talk with Eric A. Yancy, MD, about his new book, Cottonmouth, published in 2021. Dr. Eric Yancy is a practicing pediatrician of 42 years in the Indianapolis area. Born and raised in Louisiana, he attended Southern University at Baton Rouge and earned his medical degree from Creighton University in Omaha, Nebraska. He then arrived in Indiana to become the first Black resident of Riley Hospital's neonatal ICU. He was named Chief Resident of Pediatrics in 1979. He was inducted into the Alpha Omega Alpha Medical Honor Society in 2007. Methodist Hospital twice named him the Teacher of the Year. He is also honored with the Creighton University Alumni Merit Award in 2011. Dr. Yancy in his church. He also of gospel songs titled Modern Spiritual, viewed in 2009. He also performed the national anthem at the NCAA men's title basketball game in 2021. Dr. Yancy is married to Dr. Yancy is married to Pamela, who's here in the audience today, and he has 3 grown children. I would like to share Dr. Yancy from Creighton University on the occasion of his Alumni Merit Award. Here's what they said. Throughout his professional life, Dr. Eric Yancy has demonstrated the Ignatian ideal of conducting his life as a person for and with others. He has lovingly cared for students and patients alike and has excelled in striving to do more and be more for God. Dr. Eric Yancy.
Thank you very much. Thank you. I am thrilled to be here tonight. So thanks so much for that introduction. And I'd like to thank Dr. Gray for bringing my name up. I was trying to find some history about, how these normally go. And I was just informed that this is the first one. Okay, so I guess I get a chance to make the mold, so to speak. I was a little taken aback when I first stepped to the podium here because I saw this picture. And it's a picture of an old picture of the interior of this, but right at the bottom here is the autopsy table. So I was hoping that I'm standing where they actually dissected folks, and I'm hoping I have more life than what was represented here. So we'll just see how that goes. Okay, but once again, it's a pleasure to be here this evening. I raced out, and I'm still practicing. I raced out of the office a little bit early, so I can make sure I can get through the traffic and actually get here. Ran home, picked up my wife, who was, I'll say, part of the inspiration, but not part, but a lot of the inspiration for this book. And I will see if I can just talk for a few minutes, and then I'll absolutely be thrilled to take any questions because I think that just droning on and lecturing makes people bored. So I'd rather answer your questions. But let me just throw out something that I was going to say a little bit about where I came from, but that was all expertly done, so I don't need to go through that. Any authors in the audience? I know that you have one. Any others? Okay, so it's a fascinating thing, and I'll just tell you, storytelling was always a part of my early childhood. My grandfather, on my mother's side, used to call us up to his house, and we just lived not too far away down in Baton Rouge, and about maybe a 10-minute walk from my house, and he'd sit us on the porch, and he'd tell us these stories, and our thing was tell us a story. So he'd tell us these stories. He had about probably a 3rd or 4th grade education, but had managed to teach himself to read, and would just tell us all these stories. I would just sit there. He smoked a pipe, and I'd sit there watching him smoke the pipe and just tell us these stories over and over and over. And so I just fell in love with fiction and stuff because of how it actually made you feel. And I could still listen to the stories, the same one I've heard 100 times, but I still felt something different every time. So that's one of the first ways I got hooked on fiction. And the other thing I remember vividly was that we had an old set of childcraft books. Probably, many of you probably never heard of childcraft books, okay? But we had an old set of childcraft books, and number 3 was the stories, okay? And I remember that, I don't know what 1 through 12 were, but number 3 was the stories. And so I remember my mother would, there was a story night, and certain nights of the week, she would read us these bedtime stories from this childcraft book. And we would just say, and once again, I just kind of fell in love with fiction. Occasionally, I would get too hooked into the storyline. So when they told me the story of the ant and the grasshopper, you remember the story of the ant? Anybody remember that? Okay. Well, she told me the end of it, and that at the end of the story, since the grasshopper didn't work or anything, the ants did all the work, that at the end of the story, the winter came and the grasshopper froze to death. Okay. And I was devastated. I cried, I screamed, they can't kill the grasshopper, that's too mean. So my mother had to go back and recraft the end of the story and say, I'm sure she was thinking, this crazy kid is going to lose his marbles. But she had to go back and recraft the end of the story to say that, okay, no, that's not really how it ended. The grasshopper lived. They eventually decided they'd let him in to get some food, and I was fine after that. So as you can see, I've been a little bit touched a good portion of my life, but once again, the other thing that I remember from all of my Bible school classes and being in church at an early age, that there were so many parables in the Bible that were actually stories to actually prove a point. So I've been hooked on stories and fiction for quite some time. So I've written a number of things that just were short things. Usually when I write stuff, my wife will read them. If like a reading's coming up, I'll write it, she reads it. And so she knows exactly, how to read what I've written. After about 48 years together, she's figured out this is how he wants this read. So she always did it, and she does a great job on it. But then the pandemic hit. And one of the things that happened, of course, like with almost everybody, we kind of, shut down. And the visits went down by about 90%. And of course, down with the visits, unfortunately, went the revenue as well. Okay, but so I started to write a couple of things just to put on a Facebook post. And I actually wrote a post once because one of the things that bothered me was that we talked in terms of cases, we talked in terms of curves and flattening curves and whatever, but we didn't talk as much about people. That these were people. It wasn't just like the numbers. It was people. So one of the Facebook posts I put out was just a made-up story about an elderly lady who went to the store and she was going to buy her last can of beans or whatever, and there's one can left, and she actually got it, and somehow she ended up getting COVID because she touched the mucous membranes of her eye, and she ended up getting it because everybody was in and nobody was masked and nobody really cared about anybody else, those kind of things. And I put that on that post, and it received like 670,000 views or something like that. And I'm thinking like, oh, okay. I finally took it down because I was getting threats. Okay. I finally took it down. You won't find it today. So it has gone so far that people were actually starting to threaten me about this. I said, let me just take this down. Okay. But not before it had 670,000 views. So I'm thinking like, well, that's a topic that could probably be expanded. So I was sitting there thinking, because I really was always bothered by, the fact that many people just seemed not to really care about the burden that other people would carry, and so they just kind of did their thing. So I decided that maybe a nice topic for a book. So I then decided that I would start to put this together, and I usually write at 3 or 4 o'clock in the morning when I'm actually in bed. Okay, so I go to bed, and of course that year was horrific because I was so afraid of bringing COVID home to my wife that I lived in the guest room and she lived in our room, and for a year I lived in the guest room. So I would go to the guest room and people say, "You did that?" I said, "Yep." Okay, but I couldn't imagine what it would be like if I brought home this virus to my wife. So I would go ahead at 1 or 2 o'clock in the morning. I'm writing these chapters in my head, and I go to the office the next day and see if any patients were there, and of course none were there, so I could put it down on the computer. And I'd go home the next night and write some more chapters in my head, come back, put them down on the computer. And so I finally, but I wanted to craft it to where I could get in some of the characters and some of the things that had some truth to them and still be able to tell a story, but actually a message at the same time. And so I expanded that, got that going, and then I looked at how do I build the characters. So I took characters as to individuals who I thought would be strong characters that people might like. Because I think if you have characters that are strong characters that everybody hates, you know, all you do is just keep turning the pages to see how quickly you can knock them off. Okay? And so I figured, you know, no, I don't want to do that. But one of the, some of the things that happened to me during the residency was seeing how some of the children were not treated as well by some of the parents or relatives. So I wanted to blend that in. I'm from Louisiana, so I wanted to bring some Louisiana stuff in and just kind of bind it all together. But the main thing I wanted to create was a love story. I wanted to write a love story. And the book, Cottonmouth, it looks like it's vicious on the outside, but it's actually a love story, okay? And for those who may have already read it, you'll know it's a love story because we lose it. And I'll have to warn you, there are some spoilers in it, but it'll still be worth reading. So, you know, I'll tell you some things, but it's hard to talk about it without having some spoilers, so I'll have to tell you. So, but to fashion a love story, I had to build the basis of that, and certainly the 48 years with Pamela helped me build that. Okay, to say this is what would happen, this is what might happen. But also involved in it had to be some level of some of the things that someone of the professor's age, one of the main characters' his age, would have actually gone through. And so to put those things together, I did use bits and pieces from my past to actually put those together to say, this is, you know, some of the things I've actually gone through. Some of the situations in school that you'll read about, some of the, I'll call them kind of unfair advantages that some students had over other students. I put that in, and those are some of the things that actually happened. But I wanted to come up with something that was different because so many love stories deal with, you know, this, they're heavy in physicality and heavy in, you know, and things that, you know, I mean, a lot of the physical appearance stuff and whatever, but these were like two older people, okay, you know, in the latter part of their lives who basically just adored each other, and how society's, what he perceived to be society's non-caring ended up taking something from him. And I wanted to also relate to how these challenges, you know, that we run into can shape our lives, because this individual main character, could have been an excellent ball player, the whole bit, but through his inability to receive good medical care, his career was lost. He could have had other things that go on, but when you look back at the rural South, and the setting is Louisiana. Why? Because I know Louisiana. And why? Because one of the after Hurricane Katrina came through at one of the shopping centers that's actually kind of noted there, they had the best pralines anywhere in the country. Okay? I used to go there just to find the place, just to get these pralines. Okay. Now, if you're from up here, you probably say pralines, but from down Louisiana, it's pralines. Okay. I just want you that y'all know that. But they were absolutely, the only person made them better was my mother. And but after Hurricane Katrina, they closed permanently, and so I can't get them anymore, and that's one of the tragedies here. But and as you can see, I have had my share of pralines in my life. But I wanted to relate to a lot of the things from the Louisiana situation, and I wanted to actually put together this narrative that this young lady who is the protagonist in the whole thing, this young lady, some of her history and how she got to where she was. I wanted to bring in the very well educated, okay, the very well educated instructors, the teachers, the professors who are of African American descent, because often you don't see that. And so so it's not a it's not about being a quote black book. It's about the fact of just telling a story of two people who have been in love forever who just happen to be black. Okay, and so that's kind of the setting I wanted to set for it. Well, you know, they're kind of going on living their lives and doing their thing, and then his wife gets ill, and his perception then is that the world now has taken the last thing of value that I have. Okay, and so one of my favorite lines that's not even in the book that I like to quote is that sometimes a broken heart bleeds venom. Okay. And therein is the what I call that particular building part or thriller part, because from that point on of his mishap, nothing mattered. Nothing mattered. So I've had some individuals to say to me, well, do you really think it's possible for somebody to become, so angry so quickly? And the answer is yes. Okay, that you actually, especially if through a large part of your life, you've lived with a certain amount of suppressed anger that you could never express, that you could never really say much about. So when that proverbial last straw hits, then you can actually take on a persona of someone that you didn't even know. There's one story in the book, and I'll just listen out, where as a little boy, the professor, again, one of the main characters, is out fishing with his grandfather. And down in Louisiana, there's a number of snakes, and one of the poisonous snakes down there is the cottonmouth. Okay, so therefore, title of the book. But he goes, and this particular time he had a little 410 shotgun. It's just a little tiny. If you know shotguns, a 410 is little one, okay. And you got a 16 gauge and you got a 12 gauge, okay. So you got the 410. This is like, so he's like a little kid, and he's got his little shotgun with him. So his grandfather said, you can always take your shotgun with you when you go, because there's snakes down there. So he always had 3 shells in his pocket. But the gun was never loaded, 3 shells in his pocket just in case he wanted to shoot something. He had to take them out. It was almost like Marnie Fife with his bullet in his pocket. He had his 3 shells, okay? And so there's this one section, he's like a few yards, from his grandfather. He's fishing, his grandfather's fishing, and his grandfather calls him and he says, there's a huge snake over here. Bring your gun, okay? And he yells out and he hears him and it's like, ooh, huge snake. Kid gets up and he pops the first shell in his little 410 shotgun, and he looks over and bang, he shoots, and he absolutely misses the snake, but hits all the leaves around him. And of course, the snake now is somewhat agitated. Okay, so he's agitated now. So he's starting to make this he's been, am I being threatened here? So he gets out, he knows he's missed him. So he goes back in his pocket, he takes out the next one, he puts it in there, and he shoots again, okay, and he missed him, okay, and now his grandfather has this, what he calls his snake rod. He has struck at the snake with a snake rod, so now the snake is really like threatened, and so he falls into what I call the striking curve. He falls into a curve, and his grandfather is backed up against a tree, and this snake is now in a curl, and so this little kid knows that it's going to be, I either get this right or my grandfather is going down, okay? He takes shell number 3, he puts it in his shotgun, and this complete calm comes over him. He lines the snake's head up in the bead of that little shotgun he had, and he fires and just cuts his head just clean off, okay? And with no emotion, no nothing, he walks over and he looks at him, and it's like, you threatened my grandfather, you die. And that was the chilling part that he tucked away in his heart and never let go of. That you harm my folks I love, and you die. And that was, he thought he had put it away, but years and years and decades later, it comes back out. And I will say this, some people know this, but some people don't. That story is almost verbatim the truth. Okay? And the little boy was me. Okay. Yeah, that was that little kid who had his pizza. And I remember it like it was yesterday. 2 shots missed, one shot, it was like, I knew I had to calm down and it was gone. Okay. I knew I had to calm down and it was gone. And I never, for years, I didn't even think about it. Then in writing, I'm thinking like, I think I'll just tell that story. But that happened. So to actually kind of speed along here, just a couple of things. So anyway, when the whole basis of it was when something really close to you, really that you love is threatened, what depths will you fall to? What heights will you go to? What depths will you fall to right a situation that you feel has been wrong? But yet and still, and that's what the whole basis of it was. And who will then be the one to either rescue those you are after or rescue you from yourself? What will happen at that point? And I'll leave that part as the cliffhanger. Okay, what happens there? But I've had a lot of feedback, and like I said, from some folks, is you think somebody can get that mad that quickly? Yes. Okay. Each individual has talked to me. It's been very rewarding for me to hear what people like, the most. And some have said they just like the relationship between him and his wife. Some have liked the relationship between his wife and the basically main character, who is a young woman who's a pediatrics resident. Wonder where I got pediatrics resident from in there, huh? Imagine that, a peds resident. But their relationship, because she never had a child, they never had a daughter, and she was almost like her adopted daughter. And so I wanted to develop that relationship. And but the whole thing was just an exercise in wanting to tell a story that talked about how other people can feel about each other, how other people can feel for each other, and how other people can defend each other, and still, if for lack of a better term, everybody wins. Okay, to some degree, and it's all in how you look at it. But once again, I felt like I would want to spend about 20, 25 minutes, and then the rest of the time I would just want to answer questions about how I came about writing it, whatever, and just see if I can get that done. So I won't keep you here all night. But my wife knows I talk fast, so I slowed it down tonight so everybody can understand me. Okay, and so, but it was a joy to write. I can't wait to actually start writing whatever it is I come up with next. And one of the patients once in the office told me, I was laughing about something. And one thing about pediatrics, children are brutally honest. They will tell you exactly what they're thinking. So one little one asked me, he said, I saw you on TV. And I said, oh, do I look better here on TV? And looked at me and goes, you look better on TV. And I go, okay, thank you. Thank you very much. But the children are brutally honest. And I just wanted to come up with something that I thought would be appropriate for all readers, maybe a little intense for like the younger children. But I can't wait until I can kind of work on my next one, because I just like being able to craft a narrative that says, if nothing else, maybe this is how it should be, or maybe this is how I see it. But the one thing about fiction is that you can say whatever you want, and you don't have to have references like in the journals, and that's kind of where I am. I was trying to think, I won't throw out any more spoilers in case those who have not written it. That's just I've read it at this point. But I would love to take some questions. Yes, go ahead.
Excuse me. I'm supposed to say this question again for the people at home.
Gotcha.
The question was, did he do an outline before or chapter summary?
Good question, and that's a good idea for the next one. Okay, but no, I didn't. I would literally craft a story in my head, and then at 2 or 3 o'clock in the morning, would wake up and sit on the side of the bed and put it together and say, "This is what I'll write about tomorrow." So I actually was telling the story in my head. I knew where I wanted to go, but I never wrote it down. I just would tell the story in my head and go in the next day and write down what I had just told myself the night before. So, and I had to get it the next day because otherwise I would lose the thought. And so I knew I wanted to take it. I did take it in a different direction almost for the very end because I didn't, my first thing I didn't like. But from an outline standpoint, no, I just decided what the story was, all the way straight through, and then would write the chapters in my head the night before. Yes?
Stories in your head. How did you know when you were finished? When you said, I'm done, let's get it right.
The question was, there were so many, is it not working? Oh, sorry. Yeah, the question was, how did you know when you were finished?
Okay. Well, I actually wrote the end in my head before a lot of the other parts. Okay? So I had to, it was like, I know what the destination is. I just have to figure out how to get there. So once I had crafted enough, curves and turns to get to that destination, then I said, okay, that's it. So, but like I said, at the very end, I did have to change something because I had planned it to end one way and I decided, so I changed it right the other way. But actually the destination was there early on. I just had to make sure I could get there to it. And that's when I knew, okay, that's enough at this point. And I also did a word count. Listen, okay, I never wanted to write something that was so long that nobody wanted to read it. It's like, there's great works of literature, but they're like this thick. And so you get there and you go, okay, I'll pick this up next month, But I wanted it to be what I call a one-nighter, or at least a 1.5-nighter read. Okay, I wanted to be able to get through it and almost like watching an episode. So I didn't put a lot of things, a lot of real extensive side stuff in it because I really wanted to grab the reader's attention and then have them kind of go straight through it.
How long was the?
That's okay. Go ahead now. See, there you go.
How long was the process from beginning to end?
All right, we have a question here. How long was my process from beginning to end? And another question, how long was my process from beginning to end? Okay. I would say about 11 months. About somewhere between 10 and 11 months. Yes. Okay. Now that's the funny thing, about 11 months, but proofreaders, I did. Well, the person who edited it for me is my niece, okay, Dr. Carla McGuire. She's Dr. McGuire is really, not Stephanie McGuire. Thank you very much. Okay, thank you very much. Carla's my older niece, and Stephanie's my younger niece. And she and I just kind of hit it off. She's a very interesting individual, and I'm gonna get to that in a minute, but she's a very interesting individual in that she is, her intelligence is not measurable. Okay, and so she's about the same age as my daughter. So we're driving around and they're like 2 years old. You hear these stories, you don't believe them, but she's like 2 years old. And they're both in the back seat. No car seats. You didn't have to have car seats at that point. But they're in the back seat playing or whatever. And my niece, Stephanie, goes, National Food Store. And I go, look. And I look around. I said, she just saw the shape of the sign. Okay, so I'm going like, she couldn't possibly have said that. Okay, and so then she comes up to the next one and she goes, Exit 44. I'm going, so this child, nobody taught her to read. She just was one of these prodigies. We go back home and my mother said, Stephanie can read stuff. Can Erica read? I said, no, ma'am. Erica can't read. My child is normal, okay? My child is normal. But anyway, so she was that. She went to MIT when she was 14. She finished when she was 17, okay? And she's an opera singer. So she's over singing opera over in Europe now, okay? And just had a concert. So she does all these things. So she said one of the things that she wanted to do to make money while she was over in Europe was edit books. And so I go like, she says, oh, Eric, that's what I want to do. I'll edit your book for you. And I go like, okay. She said, now you want the quick edit, the whatever, she named 3 or 4 of them and whatever. And so I said, just edit it. Okay, so she did. And so she and I had a couple of battles about things in the book, whatever, but other than that, it was, it was pretty much it. I said, no, it has to stay this way. Okay, you're smart, but I wrote it. Okay. And so, yes, I did have the editor there, but then the proofreader, I had a professional proofreader to do it. Okay, after that. So I had the editor who proofread it once, a proofreader who read it after that, a proofreader of the final proof to read it after that, and it still ended up with typos and stuff in it. Okay. It still ended up with typos. So with basically almost 4 proofreadings, it still ended up with typos. But it's just one of those things. Then I read that there was typos in Gulliver's Travels, and I felt better. Okay, so so yes, I did. Yes. Mhm. I talked to some publishers. Well, yeah, I talked to the people who would talk to the people who would talk to the people who were publishers. And if you don't have a name, it's just tough. Okay, so if you don't have a name, and so one of my goals was to be. I read that the fellow, and I can't remember his name, who wrote The Martian. Okay, was self-published. Okay, and so one of my goals was to be like, I'll just do it myself. I'll put it out there, and I feel like if it's something that people want to read, they'll find it. Okay, and so I published, self-marketed the whole bit, and had fun doing it. And but no, the bigger houses, unless you actually prove that you are, quote, somebody to them, they don't want to talk to you.
You said you always love storytelling.
Yes.
Did you ever think you were going to do book, or did it just happen because you had such a poet?
I don't think I really ever said that I would actually write a book. This actually, I started creating in my mind, and the one, exactly, and the one post kind of triggered, I think, is this much interest in the story of an older lady who caught COVID from the grocery store. So, and of course, I have it's a fictional novel. It doesn't say COVID in here. It's just a fictional novel. I made up all that other stuff. And yeah, so I started to put it together. That's not a bad topic that somebody might want to hear about. It's timely in the whole bit. And I wanted to tell the story of Black intelligence. Okay, I wanted to tell. We have numerous stories about Black athleticism. We have numerous stories about Black prowess and other, but there's not that many narratives out there about Black intelligence. Now, there are certainly nonfiction books about all the wonderful things African Americans have contributed, whatever, but just a regular old fiction book about two very smart people who went back to their community and did stuff. And so I just wanted to have a different take on a narrative there. Yes. It's probably going to be a sequel, okay, because it's going to be a sequel that goes back to a little bit of a prequel, okay, because that's been the #1 question that I've been asked, and without doing any spoilers, the #1 question I've been asked is, okay, when's the next one and what happens now? Okay, so I've actually started that one, but I kind of have to be like, of course, now the office is picked back up, so it's like, right now, office is picked back up now. But I kind of have to be like inspired to do it. Okay, I always tell people God gave me the book to write, so I wrote it. Okay, but I have to be like inspired to do it, and because it has to like flow straight through. When I write the musical project that was referred to earlier, the Modern Spiritual, I wrote about half the songs on that. But I wrote some, when I actually start writing a song, I have to write it right then. So the lead song they call Modern Spiritual, it came to me that day driving into the office. I ran into, I knew I would lose it by the end of the day, ran into a drugstore, bought one of those little cassette recorder things and put the tune down in basic words to it, and then went on to the office. And that evening, I couldn't remember anything about it. So I turned the tape on, and that's what allowed me to write that one. So it happens all in one swoosh. Okay, so eventually, if the office slows down a little bit, I'll probably start right there. I've started it, but I'll probably continue it a little bit. Right. Yes. Well, I'll probably do some writing then, because I'm sure Pamela will do something to get me out of the house. Because like, yeah, she was thinking like, we got snowed in once back in, what was it, blizzard of 78? Was it 78? Okay, and my wife was there thinking like, looks like you're snowed in. She's going like, please come send a full-wheel drive to get him out of the house. Because it was like, I'm literally just driving her crazy. Finally, she heard that there was a 4-wheel drive coming to take me away. And she's going like, yes, he's going to the hospital for a couple of days. So yeah, I'm sure with retirement, I'll have to be back out in the little side room out there, garage or something writing. So I'll work on it. Yes. Mm-hmm. That's a possibility. Now, if you keep in mind, I do love baseball because the main character in this one was a baseball player. And so, yes, I have supported Little League for some time and the whole bit. So That's a good idea. I'll store that one and we'll see what we can come up with as a possibility. Thanks very much. But I guess that the other thing is that folks knew I'm kind of fun loving and most of the time, and so there are a number of people that were kind of surprised that the book can take a dark turn, and they looked at me kind of strange, like, we didn't know you were like that. Okay, I said, it's fiction, people. It's fiction. Okay, I just made it up. It's not me. It's not autobiographical. It's fiction. So, but yeah, that's not a bad topic. I'll have to keep that one in mind. Yes. Well, I'm on the staff at Riley, and 3 days a week I go out and do procedures in the nursery for the intensive care unit there. I do all the circumcisions in the intensive care unit there. So I'm the local Moyle out there. Okay, and occasionally we'll bring residents in to teach whatever. But now I'm still in private practice. So yeah, so yes, every single thing I could possibly do to try to keep the office open, I did. So whether it's PPP loans or selling peanuts on the corner or whatever, you do anything to keep the office open. Yep, still private practice. Writing a book. I will say this, don't plan you're living on that one at this point. The royalties are, but it's just the fun of writing. And I think, Dr. Gray, you've read it. Right? Yes. So hopefully Dr. Gray will endorse it. Well, from here, so I guess she does, right?
I was really impressed that it was like a real-time story. And, we were in the midst of the pandemic, and you already had a story written, gotten published. I was very impressed with that. And I had one thing that really interested me about the book, and I think I didn't say it, you gave the virus a name.
Okay.
And I thought that was fascinating. When you did that. I don't know if you
Yes, funny you should ask that. But when I put that in, my niece, who she it was the first time she'd ever edited something like this. She went to a friend of a friend who was a big time editor and author and publisher, and he basically said, yeah, I read that, and that's the dumbest thing ever. And it doesn't work. You just need to take it out. Okay. So she told me that, and I go, nope, I'm leaving it in. Okay. Because I wanted the virus to talk. Okay. It's exactly what you mean. I wanted the virus to talk. Which is the point that I'll say, if you have something, if you're an author and you have something that you believe in, just stick with it. Okay. Stick with it, because I wanted the virus to talk. He thought it was a dumb idea. I said, it stays, okay? That's just that. And a number of people have told me that they liked that aspect of it, that it was actually animated, became one of the actual figures there. And I liked the way it was done, so I left it in. So, I guess the big timers aren't always right. Yeah. I guess that's my 45 minutes, and once again, thank you so much for coming out. I appreciate it. And, stay tuned.
Yeah.
Sure. I did one on umpires and youth sports a couple of weeks ago. And when it got up to about, I don't know how many, couple of 100,000 on that one, I got a call from the guy whose picture was on it. And he said, I'm really not that guy. I'm not that bad. So I feel really bad that you put that up. So I go like, I said, you know what? That's fine. I don't want anybody to feel bad. It was just a lesson about how youth sports and whatever, I'll take it down. I'll take it down. So he was just thrilled that I did that. I got a chance to talk to him, so I took it down. So just follow it along. We'll come with it. So yes. Well, I brought a couple tonight, okay, but if you wanted to get it online, it's at either Amazon.com, what did I just say? Bookshop.org, okay, Amazon.com, bookshop.org, Target.com, BarnesandNoble.com, or I do have a couple of them. I think he's already got one. Okay, all right, sounds good.
Yeah, thank you, that, and Dr. Yancy can be sitting in the foyer if he wants to have him sign it or something, I'll have that. arranged.
Thank you so
Ready?
much. I appreciate it. Thank you, everybody.
You didn't drink any of that water, do you want it now?
Yes.